Welcome to Closing Arguments. You're looking at a young woman who went missing long time ago, May 17th, 2001. Her name's Alissa Turney. The search for her and what happened to her and what happened here was a mystery for many years. But she had a sister named Sarah. And her sister Sarah wanted people to remember. She wanted the truth to come out, and she wanted an answer and justice. So, brand new trial starting today on Court TV. Here's the backstory.
It was May 17th, 2001. Radios were blasting Destiny's Child and Nelly Furtado. Alissa Turney was a teenager living in Phoenix with her half-sister and stepfather.
And she loved animals, drawing, and music. She had a part-time job at a local fast food restaurant.
Her mother had died years back, but things were starting to look up. It was the last day of her junior year.
Paradise Valley High School student Alissa Turney poked her head into her boyfriend's woodshop class to say her dad was picking her up early. That was the last time that anyone saw her alive.
Michael Turney told police they got in an argument, and when they got home, she stormed off to her room and he left to pick up his other daughter. Alissa was never seen again.
She was 17 and I was 12. She was basically the only mom I ever had. But everyone thought that she just ran away, and the police didn't even look into it until 2008.
In 2008, investigators re-interviewed Alissa's friends who told them her stepfather had sexually abused her. And during a search in his home 7 years after Alissa's disappearance, they found more than 24 pipe bombs. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. While there, he did an interview with ABC News.
I didn't kill my stepdaughter. I'm not capable of killing my stepdaughter.
Turney was released in 2017. 3 years later, Sarah Turney's crusade for justice for Alissa went viral.
I started TikTok to ask for Gen Z's help to share my missing sister, Alissa Turney's story. And they are powerful.
With a media spotlight and new developments in the case, nearly 20 years after Alissa vanished, Turney was arrested for her murder. He says he's not guilty, but his daughter, Alissa's biggest advocate, Sarah Turney, posted this after the arrest.
Tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter.
To Alissa's sister, Sarah Turney, your perseverance and commitment to finding justice for your sister, Alissa, is a testament to the love of a sister.
That's what this case is really about, a sister's love. Absolutely amazing. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Julie Janae, joining us live tonight outside the courthouse, Phoenix, Arizona, Maricopa County. She's in Jodi Arias country tonight. Julia, great to see you.
Good to be with you, Vinny.
So let's talk about the state's opening statement today. What did they lay out? Because this is an old, cold case that took so long to bring to trial.
A really old case, but you could feel the anticipation in the courtroom. This felt like day one for Alissa, that people were ready to see what this case was going to look like in front of a jury. And we heard from the deputy county attorney, county prosecutor, Vince Imbarino. He didn't have a lot of flash, not a lot of pomp and circumstance in the way that he delivered this to the jury. And he explained the evidence that they have against the stepfather of their victim. He really focused on how strange he was in his parenting, some of the things that he did in the days leading up to Alissa's death, and really how he was as a stepfather, the surveillance that he kept on his children, and the way that he monitored them, not only with cameras that were hidden around the house, but also phone taps. Take a listen.
What you will discover through the testimony is that this defendant for whatever his reasons were, attempted to basically control every part of her life, every day of her life. Whether she was at home, whether she was at school, whether she was at work. Let's talk about that search of the defendant's home in 2008. What they discovered was that the defendant had literally hundreds of audio tapes of phone calls that had been recorded over the years. And I don't remember the exact number. Detective Summershoe and or Detective Anderson will be able to tell you that. Literally tubs of cassette tapes, tubs of VHS tapes. This surveillance system used a VHS recorder. They found VHS tapes from years ago, years prior to when Alissa went missing. Recorded phone calls years before Alissa went missing. There was no recording of the day that Alissa went missing.
The prosecutor admitted and owned some of the holes there are. You know, they don't have a body in this case. They don't have a really clear motive. They don't have a murder weapon or any of these forensics, but they have all of this extrinsic evidence, the things that surrounded the disappearance and how strange this disappearance was of Alissa, and emphasized for this jury that she didn't have a reason to completely fall off the map and run away from home.
Yeah, and I see what you mean about the style of the prosecutor, much different than we saw from Juan Martinez out there in Maricopa County. So the defense already asking for a mistrial today?
Oh, yeah, that came as soon as the prosecution was done with their opening statement. There are some things that they can't get into in this trial. The jury is not going to hear about, and we learned that through this opening statement. We didn't hear anything about those pipe bombs that were found inside of the house of the defendant back in 2008, which he was charged and convicted with and sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. That's not going to come out in this trial unless something strange happens. They also can't talk about molestation and the allegation that this defendant was molesting his daughter. And there was a moment that the prosecution brought up an interview that Michael Turney did while he was behind bars for that pipe bomb conviction with ABC. And he told correspondent John Quinones that he didn't molest his daughter. He was asked directly that question, did you sexually abuse her? And he said those are just rumors. That is not something that is true. He was pushed a little further on that, and he still said there is no evidence of that. Said that there's only two people who could confirm or deny that. I'm the only one here, and until hell freezes over, I am going to keep saying that I didn't do a damn thing to my daughter. Those were his words. Take a listen to that motion for a mistrial because of what the prosecution brought up in front of the jury.
We're objecting and asking for a mistrial. This is evidence that was precluded. The state, we filed motions in limine on molest stuff being asked. They said they weren't going to ask that, and then they brought in a hearsay question from Kiara's. We had talked to the state about that in other interviews, and were explicitly said that before they brought any of that in front of the jury, we would get a ruling from the judge. This is in violation of the rulings from yourself and Judge Ryan Toohill, who ruled that that molest does not come in this trial. They brought it up, and they played that in front of the jury, and it's inflammatory, and it's prejudicial, and the bell can't be unrung.
So here's how the state responded. They have this contract, another thing that they're using to show that this was some really strange parenting. Michael Turney had these contracts with his children, and here's just a portion of a really long one that he had that Alissa signed. And it said at the top of it, I, Alissa Turney, of my own free will and without promise or favor or threat of any kind, do swear that the following is true and the absolute truth about the following. My father, Mike Turney, has never physically or sexually abused me at any time. And she initialed that line. There were other lines about him never allowing her to use marijuana that was signed as well. So the state says because of that line, they brought that up to show his parenting, to show this relationship, this strained relationship that they had, not to bring in hearsay or bring something where they're trying to show that it's the truth of the matter asserted, because he said in that interview, the ABC interview, no, I didn't sexually abuse her. And that contract says that he didn't. So they're not using it to say he did molest her. They're just saying that this shows how strained their relationship was. The judge did deny that motion. Vinny, it lets us know, though, that friend that we know from the research of this trial who says that Alissa admitted to them that her stepfather had been abusing her, they're likely not going to be able to share that in front of this jury.
Wow. I just want to bring this up, Julie J., completely separate thing, because there's a jury clock we have up right now that stopped. So a lot of people at home, they see it stopped. They're like, oh, is there a verdict? No, just a jury question, folks. There's just a jury question in the case that we're following out of Texas, Anthony Burgos. So there's a question there. We'll get that to you later on. But Julie, let me ask you this. So what is the defense saying now? I mean, the prosecution laid out how they believe they're going to prove this, and they really established that this guy is weird. He's strange. There's an ick factor, I think. So what did the defense come back with?
Well, Jamie Jackson, defense attorney for this defendant, he was a little bit more upbeat, more energetic in front of this jury than the prosecution. And they really focused on the issue of Michael Turney acted as if he had a daughter who ran away, that he went to great lengths. He was out in front of this. He's the one who reported her missing. He even says that there was a phone call that he got from California. Now, California was referenced in the note that was left behind in Alissa's handwriting, saying that she was running away to California, where they did have family members. And he said in that payphone call, he believes it was Alissa on the other line. Here's a listen to part of that opening statement, rather, where the defense says he even went on his own investigation.
He did everything in his power to try to get that call from Quest. He called them. He was on the phone with customer service. He did everything to get that call, and they told him he could not do it without a subpoena. So he contacted Phoenix Police Department, asked them to intervene. They were not willing or weren't able to help. He then spoke with the sergeant. He then spoke with someone else. Nobody would help him get this call. So he didn't let it lie. You're going to learn that what he did was he then used some of his own money. He sued Quest to try to get this number. He filed a lawsuit, got the number. It took about, you'll learn it took about 6 weeks. He got this, someone at the end of June, beginning of July, he got this phone number. It had a California number on it, and you'll learn that he kept calling that number, and someone finally answered. He was able to find out where that location was, and he went out to that location on several occasions. He went out to California to look for her on several different occasions.
Well, Michael Turney is sitting there listening to his attorney give those opening statements to the jury. He looks different than we saw in the mugshots that we have already on file from back in 2008 when he was initially arrested in that pipe bomb case. He looks like someone who is not doing well. He's sitting in a wheelchair, which may have been obvious for the jury. One thing that was definitely obvious to them, they stopped things before court started while the jury was in there to say he's going to need his hearing aid device, so those headphones he's using to be able to hear more clearly. Vinny, kind of reminds me just a little bit of another defendant we saw last year before last, Robert Durst. Just kind of in the way that he looks very small there, sitting, listening to all of this.
Yeah, I'm always suspicious of the ones that show up in the wheelchair and whether or not they use it all the time or just in court. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt at this point. All right. I said, and I think we've all agreed, this story and this case and everything that happened is because of the sister's love. So let's talk about Sarah Turney. She was in court today. What was that like?
All eyes really were on Sarah. She was front and center, the front row of the gallery. It's packed inside of that courtroom, and a lot of them are her supporters. You really understood how real this moment was when the court started, and it was just those housekeeping moments where the judge is reading off what's on the complaint. He's given the instructions to the jury. And I looked over. Sarah was right in front of me there in the gallery, and she was already crying. Just hearing those words from the judge saying that this man is charged with second-degree murder. And you could just imagine that this was all becoming so real for her, that everything that she's been doing as a podcaster, that's how she described herself when she took the stand today, saying that her full-time job is podcasting, and she started to podcast because she wanted to help try and find her sister. Also saying that she didn't understand how important that relationship was then, and she really, even now, I think the prosecution brought that up in opening statements, that that relationship means so much more as she got older and understood what it means or what it meant to have a sister who is as caring as Alissa. So she's so brave sitting there in the courtroom. She no doubt is going to be there for every moment of it. She's already testified now. She was there for the very first witness on the stand, but someone who has put in so much of herself to this trial and to seeing justice for her sister. You feel that being there in the courtroom with her.
And it's her dad that's on trial.
It's her dad that's on trial. There's this moment that I'm looking at her, and she is literally right between a picture of her sister that the prosecution put up, and almost at equal distance on the other side of her is her father. So there between it, she's the one who is getting justice against someone that is blood, but also getting justice for someone who is blood.
Tough spot. Brave, brave young woman. Julie Janae, out there in Maricopa County, thank you so much.